Thank you, everyone, for staying for the talk. Um, just before I start, I'd like to ask you for a quick show of hands, just for me to set the pace of the talk. How many of you know what an xBOM is? Perfect, great. And how many of you know what an xBOM is? Okay. No, that's great. That's great. So my talk would be about OWASP Transparency Exchange API, which I personally think is one of the main things that's happening in the supply chain security space at the moment. I'm very excited about that. I'll try to engage you as well with this. Very quickly about myself, I founded a company called Realiza in 2019. Currently, we work on a tool which deals with SBOMs, xBOMs called rearm. I'm one of the core contributors of Transparency Exchange API, so the project I'm talking about. And I'm participating in a bunch of SBOM groups, like that's the subject I'm very active on. Yeah, I'm also playing not organizing actually anymore, but playing social deduction games, Mafia, Werewolf, Blood on the Clock Tower, if any of you like familiar, and so I love to chat about that. Okay. So there was a very recent OpenSSF white paper regarding SBOMs, which I have a reference in the slides, like on the last slide, so you can actually find this. And it lists a bunch of use cases related to SBOMs. And this is a very compressed version that I put in here. So the most important one, most people familiar with, is vulnerability and risk management. Very important. And then you can do a bunch of other stuff with SBOMs, like you can track updates of your components, know if something's outdated. License management, license risks. Very important. What if you're using some incompatible license that you're not supposed to use? AOX management. So it's end of life, end of development, end of support, end of anything. Very important right now. So how do you know that the component you're using is not supported anymore? So you could use an SBOM for that, actually. And then product vendor risk assessment, instant response. So when you do instant response, you want to know what you're dealing with. If you have an SBOMs, this should make your life easier if you have them actually readily available. And then compliance, very big thing, driver of everything. I mean, it's not the most important, but it's really the driver. And I'll touch it again in this talk later. So, and now there is actually a lot of bureaucracy and various documents involved in software supply chains. So what's an xBOM? So SBOM is a software bill of material. xBOM is a bill of material, but kind of not for software. Actually, it includes software. It's software and other stuff. So I list a few examples here. One is HBOM, which is hardware bill of material. So let's say your laptop, like what's inside on top of software, or software on top of hardware that's inside. Maybe that's more correct. AI bomb. So you're using this, there were a lot of talks today about AI. So you're using AI. What are the actual models, MCP servers, all the components that go in? That would be your AI bomb. And then CBOM, cryptographic bomb. Actually, I missed the talk, but I know there was one on quantum. So CBOM is actually a list of all your algorithms, and you can use it to figure out which are quantum safe or not. So things like that. Attestations. I don't know if you're familiar. They're like very hot in this area. So attestations are like signed statements about something. Like for example, attestation can bind your SBOM to your software, and it's a signed verifiable statement. VDR, VEX, so vulnerability disclosure report, vulnerability exchange, bill of vulnerabilities. So there's a lot of documents that relate to vulnerabilities in the field. Common life cycle enumeration, documentation, certification, formulation. Like lots of these documents. So this is like all like huge actually amount, if you think about, of paperwork that we're supposed to be dealing with in supply chain security. And then like xBOM is not that popular in 2025 because everybody thinks or knows that xBOM generation is actually a solved problem. Like like you have a bunch of open source tools, you do boom, you have an xBOM. That's great. There is just one issue that like all that data that goes in your xBOM is actually frequently hard to obtain. And that's really everything. Starting with component identity, author, license, and then what's inside. So existing tools do a very good job in actually figuring this out and like finding a lot of those things, but many still get missed. And sometimes you will have xBOMs with no licensing data very frequently. And there are a bunch of like open source crowdsourcing websites where you can sort of enrich and find it. But generally, this is hard to find. So what's the easiest way to find all this missing data? So let's say you bought software from somebody, or you just downloaded the software. So it's very simple idea that the person or organization who built the software or maintaining it in the first place are the best source of your data about all those things. So why you just don't go and ask them? And here is like the shocker slide, which basically it appears that everybody wants this data from others, but nobody really, or very small number of organizations really want to share this data. Okay, so here are some reasons why. So a lot of people question why they need to share in the first place, and then what would they share, and then is it like safe for them to share? So they say, oh, if you get my xBOM, then you know all my dependencies, then it's very easy for you to, let's say, hack my software if it lands somewhere where you don't want it to be. And there is this friction on the market that people want data, they want to have data, but they don't want to share it. And here is where, back to compliance. So big event for xBOMs was Log4j, Log4Shell thing, which I think most of you are familiar with. And this is where a lot of this regulations started to emerge. I'm putting Canada first for all, like, anytime I speak in Canada. So this is a recent one. There was like a shared vision for xBOM from 17 countries. That was like a month ago or something, which is actually a great thing in the xBOM world, because we now have a shared vision. And there is this document, ISTM, I think it's from 2 years back. Note that in Canada, nothing is actually mandatory. It's all like recommendations. But those other things, like CRA, which is coming in 2 years, that's like a huge piece of legislation regarding security. So any product with digital elements on the European market essentially falls under CRA. So that's a huge, because right now we're dealing with, I don't know, like defense industry, healthcare industry, finance, so only regulated industries. But this really makes it like everyone is going to be involved. And you need to have like a lot of people, a lot of organizations would need xBOMs. So documents in the US and some recent documents in India, mainly for financial industry, which are driving it. So regulators are driving regulated industries to adopt xBOMs, and then they're pushing their, like those regulated industry pushing their contractors, and that's how it's propagating. So we get our sharing like data sharing train moving. It's moving slowly, but let's say steadily. So how do people actually share these documents? And number one is email. I think you know. And it's not meant to ridicule anymore. I mean, it's I do that too, because how else you do it, okay? There are other options as well. I just yeah, I mean that's the guy who needs your xBOMs. That's basically his effort. So OCI registries. So you can put, if you're using like Docker images, Docker containers, you can put xBOMs near them. There are like trust portals, for example, like for various compliance standards that you can also like put your xBOMs in there. A lot of custom solutions. I'm not listing them all, but this seems to be pretty popular. So you get some URL and you put some password protection. You give password to your client and say, okay, just go and find something. And this is like Cisco standard. I didn't find actually any evidence that it's used in reality, but they're pushing for it. So they want their devices to have well-known /xBOM and that's basically how you can find xBOM for. It's a pretty interesting idea. But you see, so there are a lot of custom solutions, and number one is email, which is maybe not the best. So here comes Transparency Exchange API. So what we're building here is unified distributed way to source authoritative data across supply chain. So we want everybody to have the same API, upstream, downstream, and you can go in and out and source all the information you need. So that's the big idea. And there are other use cases. So you can quickly retrieve all these compliance artifacts, answer your lifecycle questions, purchasing decisions, compliance. And this is really cool, but this is coming like in the next version. This is what we call insights. So you can ask questions such as, do I have log4j anywhere? Or am I affected by this CVE? Is it anywhere in my stack? So you can quickly go, like you can get this insights from the API. So what's T built on? So first of all is a product component data model, which is very important. I'll show you on the next slide. And then there is discovery mechanism. And there is consumer open API spec, which is the pretty mature stage. There is publisher API spec, which we just started. It's very immature at this point. And insights coming later. So product component data model. So the idea here is when you get some product, you get specific version of that. So right now, frequently, what we see is the xBOM, what you have is some snapshot of latest offering of some software. But it's not necessarily the thing that you received or the thing that you had in production. Or from CRA perspective, if customer buys certain device, they need a document specific to that device and not some abstract latest. So in Transparency Exchange API, we respect that with this model. So this is like Log4j, everybody knows. It has two main components, Log4j core, Log4j API. I think there are more, but I'm showing this too. And then those are real and pretty recent releases of Log4j, not the ones that are like Log4Shell or anything like that. And you see each of those releases, so it has specific versions of these components inside. And that's what the Transparency Exchange API respects. I'll show you how in a bit. So discovery, how does discovery work? So we have a thing called Transparency Exchange identifier, I think. Yeah, it says index, but I think it's identifier. Yeah. So Transparency Exchange identifier, which is assigned by manufacturer. That's very important. According to certain criteria. So it would be like, so this is the schema. And the idea is that manufacturer can use one of many types. We already documented those 4, but the other ones like GS1, etc., are coming. Probably Perl package URL. Somebody familiar with the concept? Okay, so package URL is going to be also ECMA standard, like supported by OWASP. And it's like in the same standardization group as Transparency Exchange API. And so this part is package URL. This is the way how you can identify software. UUID is specific likely to your T server, and that's what I will show in the demo, but there are like other things. So the idea is that you have this authoritative domain that belongs to manufacturer, which would have a well-known /t thing. And that well-known /t thing would point you to the actual T server that from which you would store everything. I'll show you the discovery on a demo in a second. So once you discover thing, you would go to product release and then component release. And what they have is collections of artifacts, which is basically a set of all these documents that I mentioned earlier. And this set is tightly controlled. So when you add, remove, modify something, this creates a new version of the collection every time. And every version essentially is stored in your T server. So you know every time there is a change, this is tightly controlled. And I already mentioned insights. This is something that's planned for the future of Transparency Exchange API. And so there may be more and more questions, but those are the ones that really frequently important, because if there is a new zero-day report or something, you want to quickly know. So you remember, right, the time spent to discover if organization used log4j and where. So with T, those questions should be answerable instantaneously. Okay, so I recorded demo, but I want to show it live because I recorded it just in case, and it's a very short demo. So the only thing I'll point here is, you see I start with this TI. So it has this demo of rearmhq.com, which is essentially a resolver for the T. And here, yeah, I cannot magnify that, unfortunately. But this is my web server where I put the well-known /t URL and then the UUID. Warning, this will change slightly. So I submitted pull request recently to change this a little bit, but I'm showing the current version. So once I click here, what happens, it will redirect me to the T server. And this T server returns me, again, this is the Apache log4j product that I showed recently. So this T server, and this points to specific release that I shipped, 225.0, and it tells me it has 2 components. Remember, this is API and it's supposed to be parsable by robots, so that's fair, but I'm not a robot, so I'm just showing how it works. So once you know the release, what you can do, you can open it. go to collection latest, and you see artifacts that are attached. In this case, this is a demo that I built. We have like one xBOM, and it has a real link. So if I open this, so this goes to Apache. So this is a real log4j xBOM from Apache, which belongs to this release. So another thing very quickly that I can do here, I can get this product UUID and list product releases. Yeah. And you can see here that there is actually a new version now, 225.1. And I was given this 225.0. So I can actually use that information as something new. And again, this is provided by manufacturer. So this is authoritative source. Okay, so almost done. So as I mentioned, or maybe I didn't, this is going to be a standard. So OWASP Cyclone DX, Cyclone DX is a xBOM standard. They kind of created this path to standardization, which is first ECMA standard, and then ISO. So Cyclone DX is already an ECMA standard, and then package URL and CLE, I believe there would be like a general ECMA meeting in December where we hope they'll become standards. And then for T, for Transparency Exchange API, we hope this will happen sometime next year. So we're moving to standardization phase. So again, the idea is that everybody adopts it, and then everybody has single mechanism how they can go up and down supply chain, source these artifacts, source all the metadata, and so hopefully there'll be less questions about that. Okay, this will be in my slides that you can see later, but yeah, a bunch of resources regarding so GitHub repository and then Slack and these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pavel. I think we have some time for some questions. Does anyone have questions? Over there, lady in the back. Let me get up there.
Hi. So one of the issues that I've seen with xBOMs is that you have to, like the tools, the scanners, typically the like SAS and DAS scanners, they allow you to create them, but it's by repo. So if you have a big repository, code repository, then you have like a bunch of, repos. Is that something that is going to be solved, or is there any tools that you can recommend where you can generate these bombs and you can go through all your and crawl through your GitHub and the dependencies?
I would answer from my perspective as I do. So other people in the team may have different views. But I believe xBOMs should be generated on the CI phase. So every time you have CI run, you should generate, I believe, you should generate an xBOM. And the T gives you framework to store and retrieve those xBOMs. So xBOMs should be built per each version of each component. There should, there is a thing that I read recently called dynamic xBOM. So it's like xBOM for your whole project. Every time you have some update, it gets updated. So to me, that's a big misconception. I think I even wrote like a blog post about that. So xBOM belongs to a particular release. When something changes, then it's a new xBOM. Again, if you shipped to your client or like internally a certain version of your software, let's say version 1, and then internally you have version 2, which is all bells and whistles, everything's fixed, security perfect, then if your client's still running version 1 with like 100 vulnerabilities, they don't really care that you have this version 2 until it gets to them. But if there is an incident with their version 1, then they need to know. So that's why it's actually very important that you preserve original xBOM for every version. And European CRA would require that. and probably others later as well, because usually they start something in Europe, and I mean regulation-wise, and then others go, okay. There was a question, yeah. Okay, so the question is, where would it fit? Would it fit like in CI, CD, or IT part organization? I would like, again, my personal view is a lot of parts of organizations should have access. Like in real life, like developers should have access, security should have access, DevOps should have access, legal should have access because they deal with xBOM from my experience. And then IT should have access as well. But maybe this access should be, let's say, granular, like not everybody accessing the same thing. Like maybe developers would have access to more, like to some sort of development releases that, let's say, legal department doesn't need to see. That is possible. But this should, like, to some extent, I believe this should be accessible throughout the whole organization. And also externally. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. The question was about non-disclosure agreements and how does it fit. So there are different perspectives. Okay, the last question probably. Okay, so there are different perspectives on this. The most recent, I would say, state of the art, what we think about that, is that a system like T should be able to distinguish between information to which you don't have access and information which does not exist. And it should give you the answer based on that. There is some extreme approach, which I kind of like, but probably won't get a lot of traction, which basically says that very soon everything will be public. So people who are trying to hide their xBOMs in the hopes that they won't be hacked because somebody doesn't know that they're using some dependency from 2015, that's like not going to work long term. But I don't know if we get there. I mean, you see my point.